Hey, Twins fans, last chance to see a corpse. This is part 5 of the 2024 Twins Autopsy, where we'll look at where and why it went wrong for your ball club. But before the final forensic examination begins, you have to get locked on Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Locked On Twins, your daily go-to destination for the top Minnesota Twins insight, discourse, and analysis. Personally, it's my favorite show of the Locked On Podcast Network, which, by the way, brings you your team
every day.
Every day. I'm co-host Dave Brown, a professional ball writer since 1998, a BBWA member since 2012, and a Baseball Hall of Famer since this year. Please follow me on Twitter.
You're a Baseball Hall of Famer.
I said Hall of Fame writer.
I thought you said Hall of Famer.
Well, I can't go. I maybe slurred it.
Okay. Sorry, I'm derailing your intro. I apologize.
And speaking of slurs, please elevate the discourse on Twitter with Brandon at Brandon_Warren with an E. Here's what's coming up on this podcast. The Twins went 9-18 in September. Did you realize that? Going from a 90-something% chance, a sure thing to reach the postseason, to 100% playoff TV watcher, just like you and me. Mm-hmm. In previous episodes, Brandon and I have explored 12 other reasons why the Twins are sitting on their butts right now. And while there is admittedly some crossover among these causes, we've identified 15 topics that cover the collapse as we see it. See, originally, we were going to do like 3 segments. There's 3 segments on the show, and there's 5 days in a week, and that's how we were going to do it. But then they kept making news. So, we do a show here, do a show there. Well, this is 15 with this show. So the final 3 are: they couldn't beat Cleveland or several other teams that have finished over 500. The Twins' record against 500 or better teams is 20 games under 500. So that's not good. The Twins ran the bases really poorly. I don't have a lot of data on this, but Fangraphs puts together a base running statistic that shows that the Twins don't run the bases very well. And number 3, most of the rookie revelations from 2023 regressed in one way or another. Matt Wallner didn't really, but he didn't play that much either. He was hurt, and he had a thing happen to him in April with couldn't hit a ball broadside of a barn. So, I mean, he regressed for a while. He eventually recovered, but yeah. Before we get into the details on all that, let's have Brandon tell us who is bringing us this autopsy.
Good afternoon, sports fans. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And I feel like I want to say, and in the final analysis.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a final analysis in a way, but the offseason is very long and lonely and cold and uncaring, and we'll probably revisit some of these things again. So it's the final analysis, the final autopsy episode, but the Twins gave us a lot of material to work with to perform autopsies. So
there's still the Kennedy assassination. We'll talk about this for a very long time.
It's true. We're going to pick at this corpse for some time.
Mm-hmm.
So the Twins, not in the playoffs. Why is it? Well, we've given you lots of reasons. One of the reasons was they couldn't beat good teams. That's not true of all the teams. Detroit, Kansas City, and Houston, collectively, 18-14 they went against. That's good enough. And that was a stat that many of us cited down the stretch when, people complained about, well, the Twins have, they beat the White Sox too much, as if everybody hasn't beaten the White Sox too much. The Twins did well against a lot of the teams that they were competing against for that last playoff spot or two. It's true. Detroit, Kansas City, Houston. Like I said, if Houston had been a wild card team and Seattle had snuck up in there, the Twins would have had an advantage, which would have been a real one in case of ties and all that stuff. But the biggest thing was not beating Cleveland. We complained all season about how the Guardians would get lucky with this hit or that umpire or whatever. But the Twins were 3-10 against the Guardians, and that's not all because of bloop singles and because of umpires. favoring them. I'm sorry, Cy Louis. It's just not all that. But 3-10 against the Guardians is bad. Also bad. 0-6 against the Yankees. Now, the Yankees had other things on their minds when they were playing the Royals in the playoffs. If I had to do it all over again, I might have asked one of them one question about, did the Twins getting one over on you guys the year before, winning the season series first, and then beating them in the playoffs, did that, or not beating them in the playoffs, they weren't in the playoffs, but beating them in the season series, did that focus you guys on kicking the Twins' butt in 2024? Because they did. The Yankees won all 6 games. The Orioles, 0-6 against the Orioles. Now, the Twins caught them early, but that was a very telling series. I remember thinking, because the Twins had, actually, that's pretty much like started the Twins' first dive, the first part of the season where they went kablooey. And that sort of made me think, maybe they're not ready for prime time. I still believed in all that, but that's not good. That's 3-22 against those teams. So that's not good. In the National League playoff teams, it's not really good either. The Braves, winless in 3 attempts. Mets, 1-2. Dodgers, 1-2. Brewers, 1-3. Phillies, okay, the Phillies, they beat 2 out of 3. The Phillies had their own problems down the stretch. That's why that happened. San Diego Padres, 1-2 against them. So, you name a decent team and the Twins couldn't beat them. Is that like reason enough to say, yeah, you're not a playoff team and you shouldn't be, and we shouldn't even be analyzing this, or you couldn't beat the good teams and that's why you're going home?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a valid point. The Twins against the Guardians, Orioles, Braves, and Yankees, 3-25 combined, like to add all that together. Throw in the Brewers, 4-28. Throw in the Dodgers, 5-30. Throw in the Padres, 6-32. Throw in the Mets, 7-34. Like, that's against all the playoff teams outside of the Phillies, like you said, 2-1, and then the Royals and Tigers, 7-6. So just an incredible, difficult stretch of how they fared against teams that made the postseason. And to your point, yeah, they seem to have faced those teams when they were going at their best. My biggest gripe is how they fared against Cleveland. Really indefensible to go 3-10, 231 winning percentage, and especially 1-6 in Cleveland. Just entirely looking like Cleveland is the new Yankees. And
that's non-competitive. 3-10 against Cleveland. Yeah. And there are people out there like me thinking, yeah, you can still get back in this race. You can still wait for Cleveland's bullpen to collapse, which might be happening now, finally.
Yes.
2 series into the playoffs.
Right.
But when you go 3-10, that's just not, it's not like they weren't trying, but they weren't trying well. They weren't doing whatever it was to win those games. And you know what? One other thing about this, as far as the statistics go, the Twins were 28-38 in the second half. I mean, that's bigger than a September collapse or 2 weeks in September. If the Twins, and it doesn't even have to be against good teams, if they had found 5 wins somewhere else, spread them out, and gone 33-33 in the second half, that's post All-Star game second half terminology, they would have been in the playoffs. They would be. They only needed 4 more wins, and 5 would have done it. And that just finishing 500 in the second half would have got them in the playoffs. It makes me even more upset about what happened when you put it in those terms. It's like, no matter what the split, the Twins had a losing season. But even with all that said, I look at the problems on the team, and I don't necessarily, and the way that the owners have positioned themselves for not spending this year because they want to sell the team, and they don't want to saddle the new owners with more debt, that they're not going to spend their way out of it, and they're going to finish in 4th place again. How's that for optimism, Brandon?
That's a 69-93 pace in the second half, just for those who are attempting to do that.
It's not very nice.
It's not very good.
So we've gotten through this segment, and we're going to go on to the next segment as to why the Twins collapsed in the moment after these messages from our fine sponsors.
Gotta love FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Again, that's America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same place where you page where you place your bets. Easy for me to say. That's the FanDuel app. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. Vikings still favored 2.5 at -130 on the money line against the Lions at US Bank Stadium this Sunday. And they are -105 with an over-under of 49.5 on the total. So hopefully the Vikings can do their part, eke out a W, and move to 6-0 and send the Lions packing on their merry way. But you can pack on your merry way over to FanDuel. Again, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All you gotta do is place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
So we're taking one more look at the Twins season in autopsy form. I'd make a Quincy reference. Quincy was a TV medical examiner in the 70s and 80s, but you people are probably not interested in hearing about that. So I'm not going to do it. Brandon gets to be Sam. I don't know who Dr. Aston is. See, I've done it, and I don't even know who these people are anymore. But anyway,
when I hear Quincy, I think Quincy Jones. So sorry.
Well, he was the bigger Quincy. Yeah, absolutely. But Jack Klugman, who was a sports writer in The Odd Couple, Oscar Madison, later became Quincy, the medical examiner. And my favorite episode, okay, so I'm doing this, is from Quincy was the episode where he goes to the LA Coliseum for a big soccer event, which was in 1980 or whatever it was. That was a big deal because soccer was an international sport then, but really only on the whatever. And there was botulism in the water supply because somebody dumped some bad chili. It's one of my favorite Quincy episodes ever. So that is sort of what the Twins season should remind you all of. Everybody getting botulism from bad chili. I think that's fair. That's a fair analogy, a fair metaphor.
That sounds like a Greg Masterson video, a highly rated Greg Masterson video next in his series.
After you're done watching or listening to this, you should go find Greg Masterson's video about who he thinks the next hitting coach should be of the Twins, because it's pretty funny. And Brandon might get mentioned.
His top 5 list of 6 candidates. I love it.
Oh, was it? Okay. There's so many little jokes. It's funny style. And he like, hey, ring the bell for more, or if you subscribe, ring the bell. And then somebody hits a gong and you can't hear what he's saying next because the gong is too loud.
So good.
And he didn't pronounce any names right except for Bomba. That's the only word that the only fancy word that he pronounced correctly. Forget about what, I don't even remember his name anymore. What's the guy's name?
Borgschult.
Borgschlut. Brandon Warney.
Yeah, he did mention that name wrong too, didn't he? Well, we'll let it slide because I got a mention, and he used a picture of me from 2017 before my daughter was born. So I was looking a little better than I am now.
That was before you gave birth. That's what it meant. That's what it sounded like you just said, but you didn't.
Oh, by the way,
your body should not be transformed by that as much.
I'm going to try find that Quincy episode on YouTube just so I can.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. You can see the guy dumping the chili down the drain at the LA Coliseum, and you can see the botulism going through the water. And it's like, don't drink from that fountain, little girl. And then she did. And I don't want to give anything away, but it was, it's great TV melodrama stuff. And that's what the Twins are like.
Yeah.
Edouard Julien, Royce Lewis, Matt Walder, rookies from 2023. They had sophomore botulism. That's what happened this year. The rookies regressed. Not all of them. Cole Sands was, I believe, considered a rookie in 2023. In 2024, he was even better. We expect great things out of Cole Sands. He doesn't eat bad chili. Edouard Julien had the bad chili. And to get maybe half serious for a second, that was a big domino too, not having him in the lineup, because it took, how long would you say it took Kyle Farmer to get going? Like 5 months, something like that. And it was
nearly harvest. Let's say that.
Oh, boy, we're digging for.
I've got some data though. Okay, so Twins rookies in 2023 hit 272, 376, 497. That's an 873 OPS. That's in 901 plate appearances. Only one team had a higher OPS from rookies. It was the Braves, who only had 19 plate appearances. So the Twins, in effect, had the best rookie crop of hitters in 2023, which is all the more reason to be like, hey, 2024, going to be good too. You know, there's this logical fallacy that it drives me crazy every time I hear someone say it. They're young. They're only going to get better. People have said it about Cleveland. They'll say it about the White Sox, et cetera, et cetera. No, when you are young, you are not only going to get better. You are young. You are only going to get older. You are not going to guarantee get better. You are only going to get older.
That's true. I mean, it might be true if you look at it in like graph form. If you pull back from the graph far enough and you look at your progress, maybe it is. Maybe you do get better, but there's lots of valleys with those peaks, if you will, that you have to deal with along the way. And
I do have a comparison, by the way.
Right. And Royce Lewis in the second half, this is speaking of which, he started off all right. He was hitting 292, 354 on base percentage, 685 slugging. Really? That's only in 99. Whoa, that was good. In 99 plate appearances. So that, that kind of explains a lot there. But in the second half, he played 53 games, hit 207, on base 270, and slugged 350. So big, huge regression there from Royce Lewis in the second half. And it wasn't just Edouard Julien having problems, but Royce Lewis not being there, coupled with Carlos Correa being out and Byron Buxton being on the shelf for a lot of time. Huge loss for the Twins.
I feel like Lewis's start and Jeffers' start were like a big waterfall where you kept watching their stats tumble and you're like, how soon before I start saying not only is their hot start gone, but so too is their just whole season. Eventually Royce Lewis is tumbling and he's still got an 800 OPS and you're like, okay, he can turn this thing around. Well, it was 1100 when you started watching, and it's like watching the stock market go down. And it was a very disappointing thing to watch. Twins rookies, by the way, this year. Now, again, not an apples to apples comparison, but they had half as many plate appearances. They had 473, and they slashed 235, 291, 339. So how very Kyle Farmer of them to have a 630 OPS. That's basically the difference between Kyle Farmer this year and like an Edouard Julien type hitter from the season before. Then you double the plate appearances. And yeah, it's not hard to see why they underachieved in so many ways, shapes, and forms.
Now, Matt Wallner hit even better than he did as a rookie, but he only had 220 at bats all season. Mm-hmm. And, he was injured for a portion of the time. But also there was a regression at the beginning of the year where he was striking out too much. It couldn't make contact and was lost and had to go to AAA. And that was not
he was lost at AAA. He was lost at AAA.
He was.
Like he had that month in, well, I don't know if it was July he won International League Hitter of the Month or something like that. But it might have been June, but it had taken the better part of April and May to get there. Like he had a long stretch where it was like, okay, he didn't have it in the major leagues. He was like swing and miss off the charts. And then he went down to St. Paul and was like, bro, is this going to get any better? Because this is bleak. And, he came on like gangbusters at the end. But again, the damage was kind of done to the point where, yeah, he was playing great. But by that point, the season had already turned. And again, not his fault necessarily, but
right.
The way that this season sequenced out, it was kind of like Carlos Correa a couple years ago where he started going in September when the season was already finished, 2022. So, I mean, it's not Wallner's fault, but he certainly wasn't there when things started to go south either.
Well, these guys not being available or productive for the big chunks of time that they were, it isn't necessarily like the end of their the shine isn't necessarily all the way off them. Although, I wonder how Julien is a case where he went back to AAA and he it took him a while, and he was better, but he still exhibited a lot of the same limiting factors as far as contact and not swinging at strikes, letting strikes go by. He was dealing with a lot of the same issues that put him in a hole in the first place. Wallner looks good. I mean, he doesn't have a debilitating injury to come back from. There's not something huge, it's an oblique. I think that's what he was on the shelf for the rest of the season. And very promising. But in terms of this autopsy, in terms of the 2024 season, Wallner not being there meant Margot had to be there more. And we've already talked about how bad that was.
And then Kepler not being there too.
And Kepler. So
if you're going to have an oblique at the end of the year is when you'd want it. If it's going to be completely, the barking will go down and you'll have plenty of time to rest it. Whereas, in season, you're pushing to get back. And when you tweak one of those, it comes back worse. And, there's that complicating factor with certain issues where, if you're going to have an oblique, you may as well have it at the end of the year where you can for sure get it right over the next weeks and months to come.
So Wallner, we're optimistic about. Julian, I don't know.
I don't either.
Royce Lewis, I'm not 100% sure. There's so much talent there that you would think that whatever injury was bothering him, and I think they were not being completely forthcoming about exactly how hurt he was at the end of the season. I have to think that, because if it's not that, then there's a serious confidence issue or a pitchers have figured him out issue.
Streakiness.
Yes, I mean he is prone to that, and that can be recovered. You can recover from that, but
it gives and takes too.
The thing about Royce is supposed to be kind of Buxton-esque in terms of impact, or Correa-esque, kind of on that level. Julian's a very good talent, a supporting talent though. So the consequences for Royce getting right are major. And so that has to be one way or another. I don't know if he gets with Borg Schulte, and in the offseason and gets fixed that way. I think it would behoove him to do so. So
who else you mentioned, by the way?
What's that?
Jose Miranda, who had like a sophomore second half slump. Like his first and second half was like a rookie sophomore situation.
Very bizarre. Again, don't know if there's an injury there but the complete lack of power, and like almost a complete lack of power, not even like a hyperbole on that phrase. It did. Another reason why, the Twins backups, the reserves, were not able to come through. So the great depth that we thought they had did not show itself, or was having its own problems late in the season. So
I know you'll remember this reference, but I think it's 20 years ago since the Bears are who we thought they were. And it was like Dennis Green. Was it 06? So I think it's like
that would be 06. Yeah. So 18.
Yeah.
But
the Twins were not who we thought they were.
No. And I hate to give it to the naysayers and Twins Twitter or some of those Guardians people, but they turned out to be right. And it doesn't taste good.
There's a tweet out there where it's like, shout out to the haters. Sometimes the haters are right. I didn't have it today. Like, I don't remember how the tweet goes. It's like, you got to give it to the haters. They were right. I didn't have it today. So I'll have to find it and share it with you. But
I know that tweet, but I certainly know the sentiment.
Yeah.
But on that note, let's take our last commercial break, and then we'll get back to complaining about how bad the Twins are.
Yeah. You know what it isn't right now for the Twins is Game Time, but you can check out the Game Time app or gametime.co if you insist on using desktop. But again, that Game Time app is where you got to be if you're looking for a live event, whether it's a sporting event, a concert, show, comedy show, especially all these fun things. Game Time is the place to go. I've been looking at concerts and that sort of thing, already looking into the spring. I'm already prepared and ready and sick of winter, but when I'm going to go get back out there in springtime before the Twins start playing, try to go to some concerts and that sort of thing. Game Time is the place to be. And I know I preach nonstop about the all-in pricing, but if you toggle that on, you know exactly what you're going to be paying at the end of the transaction None of that goofy bait and switch where they trick you into thinking you're spending 20 and then it's 40 at the end, and who are these fees convenient for? You know what I mean? It's what is the deal with these convenience fees? I've been watching a lot of Seinfeld lately. I apologize. But between that two, you get panoramic seat views so you can see what it's going to look like where you're sitting. And there's a lowest price guarantee. They'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find the ticket cheaper elsewhere. And your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the game today. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the app and create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And finally, Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS because it's just you against the numbers. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings, easy for me to say, roll in. You can play the multipliers where if you want to shoot for the moon, you can play some of those riskier picks, higher multipliers and that sort of thing. You can do on the lower side, things that are a little safer, like are the Carolina Panthers going to lose? All those sorts of things. But you can also mix and match based on your risk tolerance. Honestly, it's really hard for me to say much more than just you got to get in the app and look for yourself. It's a totally customizable betting experience. WNBA winding down, but at the same time, we've got NBA winding up. So we've got basketball action, we've got NHL action, MLB also winding down. But there's plenty of different things. NFL, we're kind of in that fun time where sports are starting, sports are ending. So whatever you like, Prize Picks can help you. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB and you'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win to get the $50. It's guaranteed. It's a $50 bonus. Guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game.
We have reached the end of the Autopsy road. Nearly. We're in our final segment on the Twins autopsies for 2024. Why did they not make the playoffs? Why? So we're what stage of grief would this be? Acceptance? I don't remember what the order is of that.
I think based on what's happening with the franchise, it's bargaining.
Hey, you guys gotten any? I'm Joe Polette. You guys got any offers yet? Anything?
You got any offers?
Check the mailbox. So I don't have a lot of stats for this, but one of the things that the Twins did badly was run the bases.
Yes.
And we look no further. Do you remember the Ryan Jeffers bunting into the 3-6 double play with Carlos Santana getting doubled off second easily?
The one that both Chris Atterbury and Corey Provis went relatively speaking for their candor, ballistic over. I think Corey said that can't happen, or something like that.
Yes, that they provided a perfect audio track for the visual destruction that we got to see. And it didn't make any sense because Santana was like, "Oh, I got to get back to the base," and then he stopped trying to get back to the base, and he was doubled off. And it was, I think the barn had burned down, or the horse had left the barn. I think it was over by then. So, that's sort of the visual memory that I have. That's what I'll think of when I think of the Twins running the bases, and those calls is what I'll think of when I hear them about that kind of play. But there is one stat that I don't fully understand, but it's called BSR, and it's on Fangraphs, and it seems legit. And the Twins on BSR were the 5th worst base running team in the league. The worst base running team in the league is actually the Yankees. So this is a stat that
did you hear when Jeff Chisholm got picked off? I don't remember which broadcaster it was, but it says they run the bases like drunken sailors. And it was wow. It was I was like, ooh, that's kind of, but based on the stat that you just shared, flying a little close to the sun, but not technically wrong.
No. The Yankees have not shown they're very good base runners. That's for sure. I've seen people complain like, what is Aaron Boone doing if not preparing them how to run the bases, basically.
I never understood that. Base running, there's coaching involved, but you also have to know the game. That's just part of being a baseball player.
So, yes, it is. It is on the players, but I suppose I just can't imagine that these baseball teams don't really work on base running. I mean, it's maybe they don't during the season, but they have to have reminders during spring training of how to do it. It shouldn't be that, maybe it's hard to read, where balls are hit and trying to get jumps and that kind of thing. And there are things that you can do or you can't do based on your athleticism or your physical gifts. But there's also other things that you can do to not screw up royally.
I think you got to study the art more than the act. The act of base running, yes, that's important. But the art of it, taking the extra base or not, knowing the situations that are appropriate to, try steal third base, when you're on second and there's a left-handed hitter up and the catcher has a clear view to third, that sort of thing. That stuff, I mean, it's coaching, but it's also just baseball IQ. And sometimes like the rush to blame the coaches to me is like, it was a failure.
The Yankees being worst in base running, and they haven't won the World Series yet, and they might not. I think they're going to get there, but
yeah,
it shows, with the Yankees being first or worst, the Angels being next worst, Houston, another playoff team, Toronto, and then the Twins with -11, and then the Braves, just for laughs, -10.1.
It was like the hipster Twins. They just fell apart a little faster than the Twins.
For sure. And it takes into account stolen bases, caught stealing, taking an extra base, pickoffs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So for 2 out of the last 3 years, the Twins have been really bad at it. So, I would suggest at least go through the motions, Rocco, at spring training. I don't know if you have the right players, the wrong players, but
bring in Paul Molitor. That's kind of his thing.
Yes. I mean, Molitor's done other things for the organization. Why not this?
Yes.
That could be a good question to ask him. But it's the kind of thing that if you're going to pay people within the margins like the Twins want to do, and you're going to miss the playoffs by 4 games, this is something that you can do to improve your team that doesn't cost anything, relatively speaking. You should do it. So,
and those 4 wins definitely came out of the margins. Like, there's no denying that.
For sure. Sure.
Yeah.
But hey, so Brandon, let's wrap this up. And first off, with whatever Sully's up to.
Yeah, Locked On MLB. Make sure you're checking that out with Paul Sullivan, aka Sully. He's getting you ready for the Fall Classic on Locked On MLB. It's on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, because this is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day.
That's going to wrap up this autopsy in this episode of Locked On Twins. And next time we talk to you, we'll we still might be picking over the corpse of the 2024 Twins, but it'll be sort of a less official thing. And hopefully there's some news, some good news. And like we talked about their new hitting coach, and we'll see what else is new for the Twins.
Get excited. We're going to be talking to Greg Olson on the next episode, former Twins reliever from 1997. We got a fun bit of stories from the 1995 Buffalo Bisons, one of the most stacked AAA teams I can remember. And then he had a couple run-ins with TK, nothing life-changingly serious, but he was only a Twin for about a half hour, and he had a couple little times with TK where he definitely was like, that might not have went well. So definitely check that out on Thursday.
TK fans are like that. And we also talked about how the Guardians use the bullpen too much, and it's finally catching up to. We like that part. People.
Yes.
Anyway, for Brandon Warren, this is Dave Brown saying we will all see you
tomorrow
night.
Later.
Tomorrow night.
I'm going to go check out that Quincy.